Right, hello everybody. You're gonna see a mirror effect on screen for now. Um, so I'm gonna go in quickly, check that everything's working, and then we can get started. Um, okay, everything's working, so that's good. So I'll just go and quickly promote the stream on social media, and then we can get started because we've got a lot of news to cover. I'm thinking of making this more regular of a regular thing, weekly streams perhaps on, news that's going on. Um, Although I could be starting something soon. Um, Hang on a second. Let's see. Where's the link one? There it is. Right. So, let's get started. So, first of all, oh sorry. So first of all, we have got, of course, the big news. If I just move some stuff out the way, that it is confirmed now. If I can just move this, bear with me a second, guys. I've got something stuck under my. I'm revising for exams at the moment, so you can understand. Hopefully, I'm a very busy person. So this is a sort of break that I'm on right now. So I'm only gonna be live for an hour. So there's some big news, of course, coming out, and that is it's now official. Adrian Newey is going to be leaving Red Bull at the end of the 2024 and at the early stages of 2025. That's one of the big headlines. There's a couple big things, of course. So first of all, we've got Adrian Newey is confirmed to now be leaving Red Bull at the end of the 2024 or the start of the 2025 season. He is Formula 1's best designer. Lawrence Bretto is correct in saying statistically he is. It's by far the most likely option that he will join a rival team, whether that is Ferrari or Aston Martin or maybe even Mercedes. But if I had to say likelihoods, I would say he's got a 60% chance to join in Ferrari, 30% chance of joining Aston Martin, and a 10% chance of joining Mercedes. If I had to say, anyway, I think he's got a bigger chance of going to Aston Martin than he has going to Mercedes. Ferrari is the most speculated option, and it is the most logical move because they're trying to build a super team at Ferrari. They're making a rebuild. Ferrari haven't won a title since 2007 with Kimi Räikkönen. Now, for context, in 2007, I was in my mother's womb. Me, a 6 foot tall human male with facial hair and everything. Yeah, I was the last time Ferrari won the world championship. I was in my mother's womb for let me think, like 75% of the year. I was born the weekend of the 2007 Italian Grand Prix. Yeah, he's never worked with Lewis Hamilton, surprisingly. However, the reason for that is because he's always worked with Red Bull in Hamilton's career. It's mental to think that, despite Newey being in Formula 1 for over 30 years, he never worked with drivers such as Michael Schumacher or I don't think he didn't work with he didn't work with Schumacher. He hasn't worked with Hamilton. He's worked with Vettel and Verstappen and Hakkinen and Raikkonen. But he's not worked with I don't think he didn't work with Jenson Button either. Aston Martin are also likely because they've got financial muscle like Ferrari do. And he'd get to work with Fernando Alonso, and he's never worked with Alonso either, of course, because he worked with McLaren up until 2005 when Alonso was at Renault and Minardi, and Red Bull since 2006, and Alonso's been with many teams in that time, but Red Bull is not one of them. Aston offers a chance to rebuild a famous brand because Aston Martin, people forget this, but they've never won a Formula 1 Grand Prix. The closest they've come is with Alonso taking those podiums for Aston Martin. And the biggest thing is that for them, they want to build a brand. Lawrence Stroll wants his son to become a Formula 1 champion. And I think Adrian Newey gives him the best tools for that. I don't think I don't think he'd go to Williams because Williams are in the middle of a rebuild, but they've not got the financial capability. McLaren, I think they're unlikely because they are already, in a work in progress. It's not like with Ferrari, where Ferrari don't have a big structure for their engineering team, where they have one specific person in charge. They've got numerous different people in charge of the engine, the chassis, and the aerodynamics of the car. Audi's another one, but I just don't think that's going to happen because I think Audi are going to be very nationalist around their approach, and I think they're going to go quite German. And that will lead me into the next story, which is about Nico Hulkenberg, although that's last on the list for the title. That doesn't matter. Alpine, no, I don't think he'll go to Alpine because Alpine are struggling far too much for him to even consider that. He's 65 though, so he can go and retire maybe, as he said, get off the treadmill and enjoy retirement. He commissioned a yacht firm to build his dream sailing boat, so he could do a Richard Wright and just sort of chill on a boat when he's not thinking about the stresses of life. If you don't know who Richard Wright was, he was the keyboardist in Pink Floyd. He likes to race. His son is actually a racing driver, Harrison. I don't even know what he's up to these days. What is Harrison Newey up to these days? I tried to get my keyboard the wrong way around. Hang on. I'm gonna go and actually have a look and see what he's up to. Oh. What is Harrison Newey up to these days? He hasn't competed in racing since 2020. That's a surprise, to be fair, because he wasn't a half bad driver. He finished second in British F4, behind... Who was he behind that season? Will Palmer. I suppose the standard isn't as good, I suppose. But yeah, I'm saying that I'm not very good at all at that sort of stuff. He was okay in European F3, so he probably could have made a decent GT driver. He did drive in DTM for a season. Yeah. This is, of course, big. Newey leaving, although we covered that mainly last week. So now we head into the second story of the week, and that is that Nico Hulkenberg is going to be joining Sauber for the 2025 season, ahead of Audi's transformation. So if you don't know already, guys, Sauber are one of the 10 teams on the grid. Before, you might have known them under many different names, BMW, Sauber, and most recently Alfa Romeo. But for 2026, they are going to become Audi. And Audi's project is completely different to Alfa Romeo's because Alfa Romeo was purely a sponsorship deal. Audi are actually purchasing the team and are taking over the team. And I actually know somebody who's working in that project, although I haven't talked to him for some time, Alan McNish. And I think that them signing Hulkenberg is a big sign of the fact that they're taking this seriously, because Hulkenberg has been touted many times as one of the best drivers, if not he probably is. He is the best driver in Formula 1 history, in my opinion, anyway, to not get a podium, and probably one of the best to never win a Grand Prix, because he is a fantastic driver. He's a very, very talented driver, and I think he would work brilliantly at Audi as the team leader. I think that if they had to get a second driver in, I would, look to the feeder series, and it's not going to be for a couple more years yet. So if I was Audi, I'd be very nationalist about it, and I would go for maybe a driver that's in the feeder series, that's German. If you look at Formula 2, there's Joshua Dirksen who's got German ancestry, but he wouldn't be able to get it because of super license points. And then in Formula 3, and this is probably very unlikely because of his allegiance with Red Bull, but you've got Tim Tramnitz and also Oliver Gota. Gota's less likely because he's got the super license points. But if I was wanting to be a little bit less nationalist, I would probably sign the man who is currently top of the Formula 2 standings, Zane Maloney. He is a reserve driver for Stake, who are going to, as I said, become Audi in 2026. They bought the Stake in 2023. And they are building a project at the moment. They are a work in progress. And Hulkenberg leaving Haas also leaves the door open for another young driver to make his full-time entry into Formula 1, and that is Oliver Bearman. Now, this boy, he is extremely talented. I think him and Kimi Antonelli are the two most talented drivers on this grid, along with Zane Maloney, and maybe Paul Aron as well. And it's weird because, you know, you see him 19th in the standings and you think, oh, you mustn't be that good. But Formula 2 isn't people say it's a spec series, but it isn't really, because if you look at the teams and, you know, how teams and drivers are doing, there are teams that are more likely to do better than others because of structure. Now, Prema have struggled this season, but if you look at his debut with Ferrari, he did a fantastic job. He qualified 11th and he finished 7th in the race. He beat Lewis Hamilton and Lando Norris on his Formula 1 debut, which is pretty impressive considering, you know, their teammates both finished ahead of them. And, you know, Norris has outperformed Piastri this season. And, you know, Hamilton was third in the driver standings last season. So it's big news because it causes a shift in the driver market. And it also means that we've got another driver confirmed on the grid for 2025. Because for 2025, we've got Charles Leclerc and Lewis Hamilton confirmed at Ferrari. Verstappen, I'm pretty sure anyways, confirmed at Red Bull. I could be wrong on that. He is confirmed at Red Bull. Albon's confirmed at Williams. And then both the McLaren seats are secure. Alonso's staying at Aston Martin. And Russell's staying at Mercedes. So that leaves 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 seats to be filled. And I think if I had to predict, I would say that I don't know if there's a way to actually like make your own prediction with a Wikipedia template. I'll go and see if I can do that. Prediction wiki template. I don't know if I can do it or not, but if I had to predict, I would say driving for Alpine. Well, with Alpine it's difficult because nobody wants to drive for them next season because they are the worst team on the grid. It's not it's statistically true, and also in terms of organization, they're an absolute colossal nightmare. Their organization is in bits, and you know, I wouldn't be surprised if they ended up selling the team, maybe to Andretti. And if they did sell the team to Andretti in the future, I would expect somebody like a Colton Herta to drive in Formula 1 eventually, and do something that many drivers have tried to do and failed, and that is try and, you know, go from IndyCar to Formula 1. Some drivers have done that in the past. Most recently would be Michael Andretti. I think he was the most recent driver to make the switch. Although and there's drivers who have done the opposite. I've gone from Juan Pablo Montoya and Jacques Villeneuve as well, actually. They're probably the most recent. But then there's drivers who have done the opposite. They've gone from F1 to IndyCar, drivers like Marcus Ericsson. And if you actually look at the current IndyCar grid, a lot of the drivers have actually driven in Formula 1 or in the feeder series. In fact, a lot of them are European. Marcus Ericsson drove in the feeder series in Formula 1. Pato O'Ward drove in the feeder series. Santino Ferrucci drove in the feeder series. Alexander Rossi drove in Formula 1. Scott Dixon, I'm pretty sure he was in the feeder series in Europe, I think. Although I'm not sure if he was he? Oh no, he wasn't, my bad, my mistake. I thought he was. Alex Palou came through the feeder series. Marcus Armstrong came through the feeder series. Luca Ghiotto came through the feeder series. You know, Connor Daly, feeder series. VK, feeder series. Grosjean, Formula 1 and feeder series. Rosenqvist, feeder series. You know, Sato, Formula 1. Newgarden, I think he went into the feeder series, but he didn't do, he went into GP3 for a season, but he didn't do very well, you know. So, I mean, we could have a few drivers who are on the grid this year that might end up doing that. If you had to look at drivers most likely to do that, you'd probably look at guys like Logan Sargent, maybe one of the Alpine drivers, Zhou Guanyu perhaps as well, and maybe even Valtteri Bottas. Although I don't think Bottas will retire at the end of the season. I think he'll have a couple more years. So I I would predict Alpine to sell the team eventually. So I couldn't tell you who I think would be in their seat. Aston Martin, Stroll's going to be in that seat, mainly because, and I'm not saying this in a slanderous way, but it's because it's true. His dad owns the team, so it just wouldn't make sense for a dad to sack his son. That would be really bad for their relationship. Haas, I think, will be Oliver Behrman, and I do think Kevin Magnussen will be in that seat next season. Sauber, I think, will be Hulkenberg and Bottas, at least for next season. Mercedes, I think, will be Russell and Sainz. Because, yeah, I think Sainz is good to be in that seat for a couple years. RB, Tsunoda, and if I had to say one specific driver, it's difficult because, I mean, if you look at the feeder series, there's a few drivers who are pretty good. For Red Bull, Isaac Hadjar is doing a good job. Pepe Marti as well. It's difficult because there's not many. I mean, Liam Lawson's the most likely option. I'd probably say Liam Lawson. So I would go RB, Liam Lawson, Yuki Tsunoda, Red Bull, Max Verstappen, and I'd probably say Sergio Perez purely because I don't think Sainz would go to Red Bull after everything that happened in the past. Although I could be wrong. You know, I don't know if Sainz would rather, have a fresh slate with Mercedes, who have been struggling, or if he would go to Red Bull, who have a championship-winning car, although he has, had I wouldn't say a bad relationship, but a tumultuous relationship anyway. And then as for Williams, I think that would be Alex Albon, and I don't think Kimi Antonelli will be in that seat yet, but if he has a good second half of the season, it could be Kimi Antonelli. In fact, there are rumours going about that Antonelli could end up being on the grid for Imola. I think that's ludicrous because he's far too young and far too inexperienced to be on the Formula 1 grid at the moment. But, give him a season of Formula 2 and I think he could be good enough, prepared for Formula 1. Because this guy was doing Formula 3.5. You can't expect him to jump from F3.5 to F1. No driver's done that in a long time. Especially no driver's done it under the current ladder, which for feeder series, which is go-karting, Formula 4, FRECA, which is F3.5 really, Formula 3, Formula 2, Formula 1. That's the basic ladder. Most drivers have gone through that. For example, Oscar Piastri, he had a slightly unconventional route because he had a gap year, but he came through Formula 4, he did Formula Renault, which is now FRECA. Then he did Formula 3, then Formula 2, and then Formula 1. But then you look at other drivers who have slightly different unconventional paths. Verstappen, he did one season of F3 and then went straight into F1. So could Antonelli do that? I mean, obviously he's not in F3, he's in F2, but, some people could say he could do that. So that's big news about Nico Hulkenberg going to Audi for 2025, well, they'll be known as Sauber in 2025. Speaking of Hulkenberg's departure, Ayo Komatsu, who is the new Haas team principal, he's been their technical director for a long time, stated, "I'd like to extend my thanks to Nico for his contributions to the team. In the time he has been here, he's been a great team player and someone we very much enjoy working with. His experience and feedback has proved invaluable to us in terms of improving our overall performance, a fact that's clearly evident in both his qualifying and race performances in the VF24 this season." And if you look at his results, he is best of the rest. Him and Yuki Tsunoda are best of the rest. Out of the top 5 teams, outside of the top 5 teams, him and Yuki Tsunoda have been the most consistent drivers. And Haas have been very consistent this season. They've picked up 5 points in 5 races. 1 with Magnussen, 4 with Hulkenberg. And in qualifying, in Bahrain, Hulkenberg qualified in 10th. Then in Saudi Arabia, he qualified in 15th, which isn't great compared to the first race of the season, but, still, that's better than some of the races last season. In Australia, he qualified 16th, which isn't great, but then the next couple of races have been really good. He qualified 12th in Japan, and then most recently in China, he qualified up in 9th. And then, of course, the next race is going to be Miami. So his qualifying results have been solid this season, and, his points scoring has been fantastic as well. because he has scored points in 3 different races. 4 points in 3 different races. He scored 10th in Saudi Arabia, 9th in Australia, and 10th in China. He can capitalise when, Lance Stroll or has made a mistake, or if another driver in the top 10 has made a mistake, or if there's been a retirement. So, for example, I'll give you an example. In Australia, Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen both retired, so Hulkenberg managed to finish 9th, and Magnussen finished 10th, and Yuki finished 7th. They managed to capitalise on those incidents, and Russell crashing at the race at the end. So they were able to capitalise on those events happening, and that's in part due to Hulkenberg and Magnussen's very, very big talent. And it's a bit of a risk for him to go to stake kick Sauber, whatever you want to call them, because they haven't scored any points this season. Their best finish has been 11th, in Bahrain with Zhou. They are last in the constructors, because they've only had one 11th place finish this season, and apart from that, they've had a few 14ths. Even Alpine's in front of them. Alpine have had a couple 13ths. Williams had a couple 11ths. So they're last in the standings. So it's a big risk, but you can understand why he's done it, because Audi do look to have a vision behind their project. So that's sort of the second big piece of news, and that is, of course, that Hulkenberg is going to Audi for 2025, or is known as at the moment, stake F1 team at Kick Sauber. And then we'll move on to the next piece of news, and that is that Günther Steiner could be suing Haas F1 team. So this is a story that's come out only recently. He is suing them, sorry. So this is F1 Insider that I'm using for this source specifically. And that is that Günther Steiner, the former team principal of Haas F1, has initiated legal action against the US outfit being Haas, of course. The lawsuit centres around 2 key claims: unpaid commissions and unauthorised usage of Steiner's image and brand. I'm guessing that's to do with Drive to Survive, potentially. Steiner alleges that Haas failed to fulfil their contractual obligations regarding commission payments. Court documents lodged in Mecklenburg, North Carolina, which is where Haas are based. They're based in North Carolina. They're the only North American team on the grid, and they're very proud of that. Detail claims of unpaid commissions for the years 2021, 2022, and 2023, falling within the time frame of his most recent employment agreement. While the specific nature of these commissions remain undisclosed, they are potentially linked with sponsorship deals he secured for the team. Because Günther's a very good marketer. He's a very clever guy. Haas F1 chose not to renew Mr. Steiner's employment agreement, stated the court papers. This was its right, but Haas F1 has done what it has no right to do and refused to pay Mr. Steiner. Amount redacted, so obviously there's money that they can't legally disclose because of non-disclosure agreements, you'd assume, owed under his employment agreement, and also obviously court legalities and everything. Beyond the financial dispute between the two parties, Steiner contends that Haas is also infringing upon his image rights. The Italian team claims to continue to use his name and likeness for promotional purposes, including merchandise deals and website content without his consent or proper compensation. The court documents highlight the significant boost Steiner's presence brought to I did say Drive to Survive. With the team boss emerging from the outset as a hugely popular figure within this show, potentially further amplifying the commercial value associated with his image. I mean, if I search up Günther Steiner and go into videos, most of them are going to be Drive to Survive related. Hang on a second. Günther Steiner. Here we go. Okay, so Günther Steiner videos. Half of them are going to be Drive to Survive. I bet you right now. Let's see. So we've got Günther Steiner carrying Drive to Survive for 4 minutes. And then you've got stuff about obviously him leaving. But yeah, he's a very popular figure. He's got a very, he's a cult figure essentially in the paddock. And this clip has become iconic in Formula 1. I haven't got my headphones on, but I shouldn't need them because he says the F word a lot basically in this video. I want to do an impression, but I'm a clean channel. I don't swear. You let the team down. You let me down. Hello, Architecture. So, Liam, where do you think Adrian Newey will go? Mercedes, Aston Martin, or Ferrari? I think Ferrari. Yeah, so I did say earlier on in the stream, I think if I had to give a percentage, I would say 60% Ferrari, 30% Aston Martin, 10% Mercedes. Those are the only three teams I can really see him going to, because Ferrari are building a project. Aston Martin have the money behind them, so do Ferrari. Mercedes are on a downward spiral at the moment, so I don't know if you'd risk that. Although, with that being said, he did join Red Bull when they were right at the back of the grid. But they did have money behind them. So as I was saying, Haas F1 has no right to use Mr. Steiner's name, image, or likeness to exploit them in any form of media after the termination of his employment, explained the court documents. Haas F1 has not compensated Mr. Steiner for its unauthorized use of his name, image, and likeness. The legal proceedings will determine the validity of Steiner's claims regarding unpaid commissions and the extent to which Haas overstepped their boundaries in using his image and brand. But the lawsuit signifies a contentious split between Steiner and his former team. So this is quite big news, because of course Steiner is a very well loved person in the Formula 1 paddock. He works nowadays, of course, as a pundit for German TV. I don't remember exactly who. Like his Wikipedia page will say RTL, that's it. So yeah, he attended the Bahrain Grand Prix and at least 7 other races. Of course, he interviewed Charles Leclerc at the end of the 2020 and the other 2 drivers that were on the podium in Australia. I think it was Leclerc and Norris. They were Leclerc, Sainz, and Norris. They were on the podium, of course, because Sainz won the Grand Prix. So he interviewed those 3 in the post-race interviews. And then the final piece of news, well, it's not really news, but it's more of a tribute. So, of course, it's been 30 years to the day since I'll go and what I'll do is actually I'll go and do this. So it has been. What can I do? Is it that? No. Oh wait, no, it's not that. I'm trying to find. Is it that? Oh, here it is. So it has been 30 years to the day since Formula 1 lost arguably the greatest driver in the history of the sport, and that is, of course, Ayrton Senna. So it is the 1st of May 1994 today, and it's been 30 years to the day since Ayrton Senna passed away. Many people consider him to be one of Formula 1's greatest ever drivers, because with Senna, there was a number of races in which he performed nothing short of incredible feats. So if you look back to the beginning of his career, you know what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go and this is a bit of self-promotion because you know, this is the company that I work for, but this is the series that my editor James has been covering. And that is Ayrton Senna's career. So he began his career. I'll read the whole thing. It's an 8-minute read, so it is quite long. But to be fair, he has a very successful career. The Brazilian debuted in 1984, becoming an icon in his first season with a Monaco performance to remember. Ayrton Senna began his legendary career with a small Toleman outfit, but Giant Lotus saw an opportunity. We are approaching the shock milestone of 30 years since we lost the great and incomparable Ayrton Senna. Formula Nerds, aka James, and the rest of the guys there, will pay tribute to the legend with a special series dedicated to the Brazilian's glittering career to commemorate this momentous, hang on a second, I'll zoom in a bit more so you guys can see it, and tragic anniversary. The legacy of Senna's untimely departure still echoes in F1. The very design of the cars and their fundamental safety features bear the indelible imprint of the crash that claimed his life on the 1st of May 1994. It's, of course, the 1st of May 2024, so basic math, 30 years it has been. I'm just going to go and move my keyboard a bit because it's a bit out of place, so there we go. To those new to the sport, the name Ayrton Senna will be nothing more than a footnote from history. He is so much more than that. Ayrton Senna is without question one of the most important and iconic drivers to have graced the F1 grid. Cataloguing Senna's illustrious career could easily fill several anthologies, such as the stories available. Here we highlight the most important moments and races from his career. Disappointing debut leads to memorable Monaco. Senna's debut in F1 came in 1984 for the humble Toman team. That's the best word to describe them, humble, because they were a small team. Sorry, Artexture, I didn't see your comment. Liam, I'm curious, do you like the Drive to Survive show on Netflix? I think the first couple of seasons aren't that bad, but then they just started to get really overdramatic. That's my opinion. I haven't watched Drive to Survive since 2019. 2019 was the last season I watched fully. I really like the storyline with William Story. Haas is a heck of a team when it comes to storylines in Formula 1. The Toman team's DNA still exists in F1 today as a team morphed into Renault and Benetton and Renault, now running under the guise of Alpine. Of course, Toman are more competitive than Alpine are. When it made its debut in 1980, this team was a small operation, but it set the foundations for a massive impact on the sport. It not only gave Senna his Formula 1 break in 1984, but also set up the careers of the legendary Ferrari designer Rory Byrne and Chief Technical Officer Pat Simmons, who ended up working for Williams, Benetton and a few other teams as well, and Renault. Senna worked on the wording of his own first F1 contract in a similar way to Lewis Hamilton did with Mercedes today. Back in the 80s, however, this was unheard of. The main clause he desired was simple. As revealed in Senna v Prost by Malcolm Foley, I think I'm pronouncing that correctly, Senna wanted the ability to leave the team at a time of his choosing should an offer from a rival team appear. A deal thrashed out, a soon-to-be legend now graced the F1 grid. Toman failed to get their new TG184 ready in time for Senna's debut in Brazil, so he qualified down 17th in the 1983 car, and his race ended after just 8 laps with a failed turbo on his Hart engine. That Hart engine was absolutely... I'll be PC here, I'll be child friendly, and not politically correct, sorry, I'll be child friendly and I will say rubbish. The first car to retire, this debut masked his true talent, which came shining through in the next few races. Hard-earned finishes, P6 finishes in South Africa and Belgium attracted the attention of the grid, but Monaco undoubtedly catapulted Senna to the top of the leading team's shopping list for drivers, of course. Qualifying a lowly 13th, although that isn't bad for Toman, it initially seemed Senna would have to endure a tough race in the Principality, but the weather came to his aid. Sunday saw a drenched track and a delayed start. Now, it's worth noting, in the warm-ups, he actually finished 6th in the session. I think Niki Lauda was first in warm-ups, although I'm not sure on that, so don't fact-check me on that. I know Senna finished in the top 10, though, in the warm-ups. I think he was 6th or 7th. 5th, 6th, or 7th. And he, as it says here, him and Stefan Beloff carved their way through the field because both of them were insanely talented in the wet conditions. Senna mixed with Niki Lauda's McLaren, passing the Austrian sensationally, but by now the conditions had deteriorated dramatically. Leader Alain Prost waved frantically to get the race stopped, believing the track had become too dangerous. The stewards stopped the race on lap 32, waving the red flag. Senna had passed Prost to take the lead before the cars crossed the start line. On paper, this is the crucial part, on paper, Senna was now a Grand Prix winner in only his 5th race, Senna was now a winner in only his 5th Grand Prix. However, rules stipulated the race would be classified from the last complete lap. This put Senna back in a disappointing P2. Well, for him it was disappointing, but the rest of the team, they were buzzing. A podium and the fastest lap were scant consolation on a day that belonged to the Brazilian. And at the time, 3rd place was Stefan Beloff, who was actually catching both of them. So people believed that if the race had continued, it would have been Beloff and Senna that finished 1st and 2nd, although people not sure what order in. I think Senna would have won ahead of Beloff. However, Beloff later got disqualified because of technicalities with the Tyrrell team, because they had some sort of fuel issue with the car, and so they got disqualified from most of the races of the 1984 season. Senna was livid at losing the race in such a controversial fashion, sensing a political element to the decision to stop the race. He told team principal Alex Hawksridge, "Well, what do you expect? This is the establishment we are taking on." The seeds of the toxic rivalry with Prost can be traced back to this moment. Podiums and acrimonies ending with Tolman. So this wasn't the only podium he scored in the season. But despite that, he returned to uncompetitive outings because 2 consecutive retirements followed P7 in Canada in Detroit. Followed after the P7, in Canada, in Detroit and Dallas. Now, I don't know if the story will get mentioned, but there was an absolutely incredible story that Pat Simmons stated, and that was that Senna was running in the podium places. I think he was running third in the Detroit. It was either Detroit or Dallas. I don't remember which one it was exactly. I think it was. Was it Detroit? I think it was Detroit. And amazingly, after the race, I think it was. Was it? Yeah, I think it was Detroit. Or was it Dallas? I'll see if it was Dallas. Yeah, it was Dallas. Okay, so it was Dallas, and Senna had wrong thing. So Senna had been running in the podium places in Dallas. When he hit the wall, I think it was 47, 48, 49 laps into the race, and he said he thought the wall had moved. Now, Simmons didn't believe him and was like, okay, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Let's go and have a look at the wall that you crashed at, and let's see if that's right. And the bricks had moved because of how warm it was. The drivers were hitting the wall, and the bricks were actually moving. And the wall had moved. So Senna was driving so precisely that he could tell that the wall had moved, which is just incredible to me, because of course when you're in a Formula 1 car, you don't focus on a tiny little aspect like the wall being slightly out of place. You focus on what's in front of you, and that is staying on the track and keeping out the barriers. So for him to race with such a precision that he knew that is just crazy. A brilliant podium at Silverstone. I don't know if it was Silverstone. Was it Silverstone? It was at Brands Hatch, but anyway, that doesn't matter. It's fine. Provided a brief reprieve from the misery, but he retired the following 3 consecutive rounds. However, behind the scenes, the Brazilian worked on an escape plan from Tolman. His sights were set on the top team, and he secured his future by the Dutch Grand Prix. And this is when the chaos began. The news that he signed for Tolman in 1985 surprised the paddock and Tolman team principal Alex Hawkridge. Senna signed for Tolman on a 3-year deal and served notice, having not completed a full season. Tolman responded to Senna's resignation by suspending him for the next race in Monza, and they brought in, I think it was Stefan Johansson, and he actually did a really good job. I think he finished in the points, didn't he? Yeah, he finished 4th. And I need to make a video on this race, because there was 2 drivers in that race who didn't score any points despite finishing in the points places, but that's a different thing altogether. Senna said the announcement of his imminent arrival at Lotus could have been handled better. Criticising team manager Peter Warr, the Brazilian's emotional side showed. The whole thing, as Zandvoort was discussing, I was very annoyed with Peter Warr. No release, no news was supposed to go out at all. Before anything could be said, it was my duty and desire as a professional to inform Tolman that I was 100% leaving, plus where I was going. It was a bad start to my relationship with Warr, but this is Formula 1 and I have learned from it. So Senna was he was the kind of guy who wore his heart on his sleeve. He was a very emotional driver. Despite, the idea that he was a robot behind the car with no emotion, there were moments where, you could tell he was a very emotional person. One example was in Belgium in 1991 with Eric Komas, and another one was, of course, on that fateful weekend in Imola, after Roland Ratzenberger died, and his anniversary was yesterday. Retiring on his return, Senna completed his first year at Tolman with an omen of what was to come. Qualifying the underperforming TG184 in 3rd place, he converted this into P3, the checkered flag, and this was in the Portuguese Grand Prix. A statement of intent for his Lotus debut in 1985. 1985 proved to be Tolman's last year in Formula 1. The team struggled for reliability and consistency, withdrawing at the end of the year, and then they were bought out by Benetton. Driving prowess shines on Lotus debut. So, this was in his second race. So, Senna demonstrated in only his second race with Lotus why they snapped him up in the iconic black liveried cars, the John Player Special car, Chef's Kiss. Chef's Kiss. He qualified nearly half a second ahead of Prost's McLaren at the Portuguese Grand Prix. Conditions rivaled the atrocious weather seen in Monaco. Without the barriers of Monaco to restrain him, the Brazilian simply just disappeared in the race, which resembled a monsoon hitting an ocean. Such was his prowess in the wet. Senna won by over a minute from Michele Alboretto's Ferrari, the only other car on the lead lap. By the way, I'm just going to very quickly say on an off note, Michele Alboretto's 1985 season was phenomenal. Very, very talented driver, very, very underrated. Sadly, reliability woes were never far away. In 1985, the Renault turbo engine suffered from appalling reliability. Senna retired from 6 of the 16 rounds that season, 4 of which were engine related. He won again in 1985, taking a dominant win in Belgium in the end of the year with 2 wins, 4 podiums and 7 poles. Senna matched his 2-win record again in 1986. The Brazilian was really off the podium, visiting the Rostrum 6 times. He became an outsider in a 4-way title fight, an example of the turbo era at its finest. The 80s were a crazy time for Formula 1, and it was when racing was at its finest. He produced blinding drives, including a dramatic win of just 0.014 seconds at the checkered flag from Nigel Mansell's Williams Honda. Mansell would lose the 86 title in spectacular fashion in Adelaide, suffering a tyre blowout. Yeah, that win that Senna took, actually, I don't know if it did cost Mansell the title, but it certainly had a part in it, because he lost quite a few points because of it. Yeah, 2-point difference. Now, it was 9-6. So if Mansell had won that race, he'd have won the World Championship, which is crazy to think about. So Senna technically gave Prost the championship, which is quite funny. But yeah, more retirements caused Renault's unreliability to scupper any title challenge. Renault referring to the engine, of course. Despite the challenges, Lotus seemed to be on the up after a difficult period following the death of team founder Colin Chapman. Mixed year sets up iconic move. Yeah, this was a very mixed year for Senna in 1887. Senna's final year at Lotus acted as a springboard to a bombshell move at the end of the season. Honda replaced Renault power in 1987, but frustration became a familiar emotion for the Brazilian as his season fizzled out. Williams Honda was the class of the field in 1987, but Senna acted his best to the rest. Politics came into play, with Senna's contract dictating preferential treatment over new teammate Satoru Nakajima, but this was not enough to guarantee continuing with Lotus. Now, what I'm going to say is there's a really interesting story that Derek Warwick told. I'll see if I can go and find it. About a contract. Oh, I didn't realize Ted Tolman passed away. I didn't even know that. I didn't even know Ted Tolman had passed away. That's another thing, I suppose. I'm trying to see. Yeah, here it is. So I'll go in quickly, obviously, find my way to it. So this was written by Alan Henry. So yeah, it says here. Oh, I can't read it because you need a subscription. Okay, I'll have to find. There was something about his contract. I'll see if I can find it. Oh yeah, so here it is. I don't know if you guys can see that. Many consider Derek to be the best driver to never win a Formula 1 race. He was so good that Senna flat out refused to have him as a teammate at Lotus in 1986. So yeah, there you go. And in 1986, he actually had Johnny Dumfries as his teammate. And Dumfries didn't do very good. Although Dumfries was a decent driver, he just wasn't suited to Formula 1. He was better in endurance racing. And that's the case with a lot of drivers, to be fair. A lot of drivers don't do great in Formula 1, but do brilliant in sports cars. Brendan Hartley, Satoru Nakajima, who's funnily enough, Kazuki Nakajima, who's Satoru's son, funnily enough. But this was not enough to guarantee continuing with Lotus. The team's competitive edge had begun to web away, and Williams began to streak clear of the rest of the field after the early races. The year started with a sense of deja vu as his Honda engine expired on lap 3, all the more frustrating disappointment considering he qualified in P3, third place. Senna pushed hard to keep up the charging Williams duo of Mansell and Piquet, colliding with Mansell in Belgium. He and Senna had a dramatic altercation, including Mansell grabbing Senna by the throat. Such exchanges are consigned to history. Senna's legendary emotional temperament also raged again in 1987. Qualifying a lowly 10th, his car stalled at the start. Raging at Marshall, who refused to assist him, he punched him in the face. He got fined $15,000 or £41,000 in today's money. This appeared to trigger a performance run as 2 consecutive wins followed. However, this would be the highlight for Senna in 1987. Disillusioned, he signed for McLaren at Monza, though this was not straightforward. He quite literally flipped a coin with Ron Dennis to settle a disagreement over salary details. Speaking to F1.com, the official Formula 1 website, Dennis recalls the exchange. We started to butt heads on money, $500,000, and couldn't agree. This got really tense. It was becoming relationship threatening. Everything had to be black and white for him, and the concept of chance didn't enter his psyche. So I said, let's flip a coin. So yeah, Ron Dennis was a clever cookie. He knew how to keep Senna calm. He completely lightened up. This was fun. After a bit of debate about who would do it, I flipped the coin and won the bet. When neither of us had told at the time was it was a 3-year contract, so it was a $1.5 million flip. That's crazy. I know it has been seen as a total disrespect for money, but the fact that it was great respect because it was the only way to break our logjam. After that, everything's cascaded and off we went. With the challenges beginning before Senna had turned a wheel on McLaren, the start of one of Formula 1's most iconic partnerships and rivalries was now set to take off. So that was the early years. And then we move on to 1988 to 1991, I think this is. And this is Ayrton Senna, the golden McLaren years, and a fierce rivalry. Brazilian's time in racing in white and red is now part of F1 folklore, and that's completely true. It's the kind of thing that Led Zeppelin would sing about. Following a spell at Lotus, Ayrton Senna became an unstoppable force at McLaren. It's the kind of story that Led Zeppelin would sing about, indeed. When Senna joined McLaren, it became the final piece of a motorsport perfection puzzle. Very good alliteration there. McLaren had forged a formidable partnership with Honda, birthing the now legendary RA168E 1.5 V6 turbo engine. A technological marvel, it roared with power like no other, commanding respect and admiration from all corners of the racing globe. Combined with the MP4 chassis designed by Steve Nichols and legendary Gordon Murray, teammate Alain Prost, F1 now had a truly unstoppable force. This would be a season where the team would claim 15 out of 16 wins, a record that stood until the likes of Mercedes and Red Bull emerged in recent years. And in terms of percentages, it is one of Formula 1's most dominant ever seasons. If you had actually looked at what their results would have been in Formula 1 points today, I'm gonna go and count these. I'll do this in a bit, but like, if you look at the amount of points that they got, it would be ridiculous, basically. Senna got 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 wins. So 8 times 25 is 200, and then 3 second place finishes. So that would be 254, 255 for the point in Italy, 267 in Spain, and 270. So he would have gotten 275 points plus 3 fastest lap points. So what's that? 270 something points, 278 points, I think that is. And Prost would have gotten even more, I think, because Prost one was more consistent. He got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 second place finishes, which is, oh gosh, 126 points from getting second, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 wins. So that would be 175. So he got over 300 points. So they would have gotten over 500 points in, what was it, 16 races, plus obviously a few fastest lap points for Prost as well. That's just crazy. So yeah, they were absolutely dominant. Absolutely dominant. Senna v Prost was the story of 1988. Two drivers at the peak of their powers pushing each other to the limit. Two title contenders in one team can have political ramifications, and this rivalry proved to be one of F1's most iconic and divisive. Now, of course, journalists typically don't give their opinion, but for me, this is the greatest rivalry in Formula 1 history. Lewis and Nico was brilliant. Nicky v James Hunt, Nicky Lauda v James Hunt, amazing, but they weren't in the same team. Schumacher v Hill, also pretty cool. But Senna v Prost, that's like, it's like ranking, you know, Beatles songs, and you're comparing Revolution 9, Why Don't We Do It in the Road, and Eleanor Rigby. There's just no comparison. Two are they're Beatles songs, so they have a bit of weight about them, and one of them is iconic, for a good reason. Revolution 9 is of course iconic for all the wrong reasons, and I don't know if my girlfriend's watching this, but she knows exactly what I am on about, because we both listened to that song, and it is absolutely mental. Anyway, back on task. 1988, a tense one-horse race. Relations between Prost and Senna started well in 1988. It became apparent from the early sessions that the MP44 would be untouchable, with McLaren already having one hand on the Constructors' Trophy. The question was who would be world champion at the end of the year. And this is the season was mental. The season heralded a now customary disappointment for Senna after taking pole position in his adoring home crowd by over half a second from Nigel Mansell's Williams Judd. Again, that's another engine that was absolutely terrible, like the Heart that I mentioned earlier. His car jammed in first gear. Racing back to the pits for the spare car, he started from last place and carved through the field. On a field of 26 cars, he moved into 21st place by the end of the first lap. Sadly, his efforts were in vain as he was disqualified for changing cars after the green flag was waved, and Prost took victory. With something to prove, Senna decimated his rivals in the next round in Imola, qualifying over 7 tenths ahead of Prost and 3.3 seconds ahead of Nelson Piquet's Lotus. I'm just going to go and check that, because that doesn't sound believable. Let me just zoom in on that, guys. Hang on. What the actual heck am I seeing here? What am I seeing here? People think Red Bull were dominant. People think Red Bull were dominant. He took victory with Prost 2 seconds behind the McLaren's lapped the entire field. I'm not surprised. In a display of utter domination. The next round in Monaco saw Senna take pole position from Prost by 1.4 seconds. It is a lap that's now revered. Yeah. Sadly, there's no footage of this. Yeah, this is a McLaren social media post. Sadly, there's no onboard. For the race. Ayrton described the lap as one of the most intense experiences of his entire life. Yeah, this car was just incredible. Monaco 1988. On that day, I said to myself, that was the maximum for me. No room for anything more. I never reached for that feeling again. Which is crazy, considering some of Senna's qualifying sessions are iconic. Winning 6 of the next 7, Senna was unstoppable. That was until Monza. Now, I have a conspiracy theory for this, but I'm not going to say it because it's a conspiracy theory to do with Schlesser and Honda. Sort of all I'm going to say on that matter. Taking another pole position, McLaren's 100% winning streak was ended abruptly after Senna collided with Jean-Louis Schlesser while attempting to lap the one-off replacement for Mansell at Williams. Berger took an emotional win for Ferrari, the first since founder Enzo Ferrari's death. It was only 3 weeks after his death. It was their home race, and it was a 1-2 as well. Michele Alboreto finished second. I think it would have been even more emotional if Alboreto had won, because he was from Milan, which is near Monza. Senna could wrap up the title in Japan, but dropped back to P14 at the start. Now, this race was incredible from him. In a race that demonstrated McLaren's utter domination and Senna's prowess, the Brazilian crawled his way back, overtook Prost and won by 9 seconds, and he had his first title with 1 race to go, but this race would come under scrutiny in 1989. Yeah, 1989 and 1990 Japan are 2 of Formula 1's most controversial races ever, and both have a common denominator. Senna and Prost crashing into each other. And this rivalry started to heat up to a ridiculous degree. Once again, McLaren dominated, taking 14 out of 16 wins in 1989. I think the other 2 wins were by Ferrari at the end of the season. But I'm not completely sure on that. I think Australia was won by... Oh, no, Boutsen won in Australia, that's right. And in Japan, Nannini won, that's it. And you'll see why Nannini won, in case you don't know already. And Nannini's Benetton. But a frosty atmosphere emerged in this team as distrust ingrained itself at the British outfit. Prost and Senna wanted to outrace each other on and off the track. This resulted in all-out psychological warfare between the drivers. Accusations of driver favoritism are nothing new in Formula 1. Throw in a fight for the title and stakes become biblical. I love James's wording here. Like, I'm not just saying this because he's, my editor, but genuinely, James's word choice here is incredible. This should be used for a higher English exam paper. It's that good, genuinely. Distrust reached new heights at San Marino when Steiner broke a pre-race agreement to take victory. Prost revealed an agreement that he had with 2 previous teammates. Whoever wins the start does not get attacked into the toes a hairpin. You could say Senna was a Tosa. Yeah. Senna reneged on this, infuriating Prost. Senna later apologised, but the damage was done. Speaking to L'Equipe at the time, Prost said, "I now know what Senna is. I should have known last year. I won't make the same mistake again. McLaren have always been loyal to me, and as far as technical decisions go, I will not completely close on the door. As far as Senna's, I want pickle right now. Hello, I want pickle right now. I do not want pickle right now, but I don't know about you. I am quite hungry, but I don't like pickles. Pickles have ruined my life. As far as Senna is concerned, I want nothing more to do with him. I have always tried to keep good relations in the team, but I will no longer do that with Senna." And then, this set the tone for the rest of the season as warm politics engulfed the team. Prost wanted revenge in Monaco, but Senna's now legendary lap of the Principality put paid to that. Lapping over a second clear of Prost after an initial close match was a devastating statement of intent. His first Monaco victory also buried the ghost of the year before. In an extraordinary press conference before the French Grand Prix, team principal Ron Dennis stated that the differences between the Honda engines on the two McLarens had been discovered, with Prost disadvantaged. Prost's car had used more fuel but did not use the same power delivery, shedding new light on Senna's storm through the field in Japan the previous year. So basically, do you think Mercedes upgrades will work in Miami? To be honest, I haven't really looked into that a lot. But I think it'll be interesting. I think that they'll be closer, but you got to remember that some upgrades work and some don't. Haas 2019 is a prime example of that. I hope it works because then we get more competition, and I hope Ferrari's upgrades work as well. I don't know when they're bringing them in or if they've already been brought in, but hopefully they've not already been brought in because Red Bull are just dominant. But it's good to have more equality in the field. Or just to have, in this case, as I'm reviewing now, 2 drivers in the same team fighting for a championship. Unreliability began to do Senna's strong work, and Prost found himself in a position to win the title at Suzuka, as Senna did in 1988. Prost wanted every advantage over his teammate and removed his gurney flap without Senna's knowledge. This made the MP4-5 faster in the straights, but slower in the corners. And at Suzuka, that's quite big, because there's a couple of big straights there. Senna lost out at the start and pushed to catch Prost. His attack came on lap 40. In one of F1's most defining moments, Senna dived down the inside in the final corner, and the 2 cars collided. Prost came out of his car immediately, while Senna received help from the marshals and rejoined the track. Senna won the race, but was disqualified. Was later disqualified. Prost took the title after Senna's appeal was dismissed. The ramifications of this incident was high. The FIA fined Senna $100,000, a new record for the time, and gave him a 6-month suspended driving ban. I feel everybody forgets about Roland's death the day before Senna passed. I do agree on that, because Senna was a 3-time champion, and a lot of people do tend to neglect Roland. And he was a very, very talented racing driver. He did brilliantly in Japan, in Japanese Formula 3000. He won. Did he win it? Did he win races? I don't know if he won races or not. But he was quite a quick. Yeah, he won in Suzuka, and he got podiums there, and he was quite a quick driver. He beat Eddie Irvine. He beat Eddie Irvine. That's all I need to say. You know, that's pretty impressive. That he beat. Hang on. That he beat Eddie Irvine. You know, in Japanese Super Formula, and he finished third in British Formula 3000 in his only season. Although with that being said, Gary Brabham did win that, and we don't talk about him for much legal reasons. He passed on impact. His head was even up straight when the car stopped. Yeah, I've seen the footage of it, and yeah, if you're watching this right now, whether that be live or in replay, do not look it up because it is pretty traumatic. It's yeah. I remember David Brabham was talking about the incident, and he said on Roland's accident that he was just behind him and he saw that there was purple bits all over the track, and he knew it was Roland because there was no other. I saw it. Yeah, it's pretty horrible accident. And yeah, his teammate David Brabham, he was right behind him, and he saw the accident. Well, he didn't see the accident happen, but he saw that there was purple bits all over the track, and he knew it was Roland because Simtech, the team that they were driving for, was the only team that had purple on their car, or purple in specific areas. And he knew it was Roland, and when he came round, he looked at him and he knew he was dead instantly because of what it looked like. I don't know if the video's up on YouTube, but there is a clip of David Brabham talking about it. I'll go and see if I can find it. Because it's pretty. Oh, I spelled his name wrong. I don't know if it'll be here somewhere, but I mean, there's the accident there. I don't want to see it. But yeah, I remember what happened. The front wing failed, and it got lofted over the car. I don't know if it'll say here, but let's see. Yeah, here it is. Here. What hurts the most is that Eric Lomas wanted to help Senna, but it was too late. Yeah. Well, I don't know if he wanted to help him or not, or if he was just unaware of what had happened. I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, I'll talk about that in a minute with Senna. But I do want to talk about this quickly, because that is a very good point. So he says, I was out on track and saw some parts and there was some bodywork and it was the same colour as my car. I knew then it was Roland. As I'd gone around the corner, I seen him and seen the car. It was a very vivid moment in my memory and one that I still can see clear as today. For me, I was looking at someone who wasn't there anymore. I went back to the pits and of course everybody's in a state of panic. I drove past the car and they were all asking me, what do you think? And I remember my wife Lisa, who's actually Mick Thackwell's sister. He was a very talented racing driver. He was one of the youngest ever Formula 1 drivers. Youngest to score points until Jenson Button, I think it was. Asking me what I thought, and I said, I think he's gone. There was something about it. And yeah, him and his reaction to that was very brave. What made me mad after Roland passed, they should have called off the race. Yeah, I there was just a sort of aura around that weekend that was just all wrong, and talking about it gives me shivers. I've got shivers right now down my spine thinking about it. It's just that race never should have happened, but it did, and it all went wrong. Yeah, it was horrible. So yeah, I'll come back to that in a bit. 'Cause I want to just quickly get Senna's bit done, and then I'll talk about the Comas thing as well. A rush of blood to the head did not cause this historic moment in F1 history. Senna raged after losing it in such a manner he called it manipulation of the championship as his very public war with FIA President Jean-Marie Balestre threatened to cost him his career. Now, now I don't know if James mentions it or not, but the reason why Senna had a war with Balestre was because he accused him of being biased towards Prost because they were both French. The issue dragged over the winter. Speculation mounted Senna was not returned for 1990. A delay in receiving a super license only made the media ask more questions, though eventually resolved. The tension between Senna and the sport was very clear. Prost had concluded he could no longer work with Senna, opting to sign for Ferrari in 1990. Fierce rivals were no longer in the same team. Senna could now focus on championship bid as an born driver of McLaren. Hang on a second, I need to burp. Do you think if they had the Halo, Roland wouldn't have passed? It was more the impact of the crash that was so bad, I'm pretty sure. With Senna, he would have absolutely survived. The crash wasn't that big for Senna. I'm trying to see. Yeah, he wouldn't have survived because, I mean, it was 500 G. He was going at 300 kilometers. The car went straight on at 195 miles an hour. Now, I do not know very many drivers who have survived crashing flat out at 195 miles an hour in a 1990s Formula 1 car. I don't think there's been anybody that survived that. There were no tyre barriers or any other impact absorbing installations in place at the Villeneuve curva, and he hit the bare concrete wall with 500 G being measured. A basilar skull fracture killed him. Nothing could have been done. The Halo wouldn't have done anything. It was about the track conditions, not the cars as such. And also, to a degree, the cars. I mean, an accident like that's just sort of a freak accident. And with Senna's, it was a freak accident as well. Both of them were freak accidents, but they happened because of the poor conditions of the circuit. He and Prost won the opening two races of a tight campaign. Any unreliability from Ferrari or McLaren had a dramatic effect on momentum. Collisions and political intrigue seemed to be in short supply in 1990. That wasn't until the penultimate in Suzuka, where again Senna could take the title. Still seething from his disqualification the previous year, he publicly stated Prost would not finish the. Well, that. I mean, that sort of gave it away a bit. I mean, I'm surprised they didn't disqualify him from the World Championship, but hey ho. With Prost on pole position, Senna. I thought Senna was on pole for that race. I could swear Senna was on pole for that race, but because I think what happened was Senna started on the dirty side of the track. Yeah, Senna started on pole, but he was on the dirty side of the track, so it was effectively, Prost was effectively on pole position. Senna dived in the inside of the first corner, taking both of them out of the race, giving him the title. Senna was unrepentant. Speaking of years later, as reported by Autosport, Senna revealed the true reasons behind the crash. The foundations actually laid, of course, from 1989. Senna had also had an Austrian flag for after the race featured. He did, yeah. I remember Damon Hill mentioning that in a documentary, and yeah, that's just so sad. It's so weird because Austria haven't had many drivers in Formula 1, and yet so many of them have been lost in accidents in Formula 1. Jochen Rindt, Roland Ratzenberger, and then there was others outside of Formula 1, and yeah, it's just really sad. Senna actually admitted that he deliberately crashed. I'm not even going to read the quote because, yeah, Balestre gave an order that it wasn't to be changed. I know how the system works, and I thought this was really, and he swore. So I said to myself, okay, whatever happens, I'm going to get into the first corner first. I'm not prepared to let the guy turn into the corner before me. If I'm near enough to him, he can't turn in on me. He just has to let me through. I didn't care if we crashed. I went for it, and he took a chance, turned in, and we crashed. I don't know if he'll mention about Spa in this. Okay, I don't think he does. So what I'll do is I might actually, I'll come back to this and I'll see if he mentions it in, if James mentions it here. 16-minute read. Okay, James. Okay, I'm ready to read this. Yeah, there's Barrichello's crash, and then there's Roland before the accident. I'm surprised Roman survived. Yeah, but that was because of the Halo, and it was another freak accident, and the Halo saved him again. I'm trying to see if there's anything about the Comas accident. I don't think there is. Yeah, it doesn't say there, but yeah, what happened was Eric Komas had an accident at Spa in I think it was 1992, and Senna basically saved his life. I think it was at Belgium in 1992. Was it? Yeah, it was. So it says here, Ligier driver Eric Komas was injured and briefly knocked unconscious in a heavy crash during practice on Friday and was advised. It was in practice. Sorry, it wasn't in qualifying. Yeah, it was 1992. Senna encountered Komas' car on the racetrack, stopped to help him, and cut off the engine to reduce the risk of fire. Komas later credited this with likely having saved his life, because if he had kept, on the throttle, the car would have been set alight basically, and he probably would have died of burns, because he wouldn't have been able to get out of the car because he was unconscious. Yeah. I don't know if it'll mention about. Yeah, it doesn't mention about Imola, but what I'll do is I'll go into here and I'll see if I can find it. Okay, yeah, here it is. Yeah, they didn't realise it had been crashed. Calf commented, "Now this is ridiculous. I mean, how can that Lewis get out of the pits when there's a red flag?" And Watson supplemented, "I'm gobsmacked. I think it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen any time in my life." Yeah, after seeing Senna's accident scene, Komas was so distressed that he withdrew from the race and did not speak of what he had witnessed for more than 10 years. Yeah, I mean, I don't think very many people talk about it in that sense, because it's such a defining moment. But yeah, 1991 was Senna's last championship. Unlike the previous year, Balestre did not act and Senna didn't face repercussions, which is a surprise. Prost was now consigned to a supporting role in F1 for 1991, as Ferrari would produce the hopeless. Do you think Max Verstappen will go to Merck? Because I think no. I think the whole team is sort of falling apart at the minute. If you look at the last stream I did about Newey and about the circular power division that's going on, I think I've got it actually saved here. Yeah, it's crazy. Senna might, not Senna. Verstappen could leave, because I think it's getting a bit too dramatic for his liking. And of course, Max has morals. I don't know if you'll want to be at a team with that sort of allegations going about. Then apparently too heavily based on the 1990 car, Scuderia failed to win a race all year, starting a 58 race win drought, and that lasted until 1996 no, 1995 in Canada, I think, or 1994 in Germany. It was crazy. Fun fact: if Senna didn't move in 1994, he would still be alive. Yeah, I mean, it's not really a fun fact, but yeah, I mean, that would probably be true. Although he would have drove the absolute nightmare of a car that was the 1984 McLaren that was powered by, I think it was Peugeot. Were they powered by Peugeot in that season? I think they were. It was absolutely dreadful, that car. Yeah. 7 wins in 16 races. Oh, sorry. Senna now had his chief rival in subpar machinery. McLaren and Honda at the height of their powers behind him, but a new rival had emerged. Williams and Renault were now becoming class acts. Although Senna enjoyed a strong 1991, the iconic blue and yellow Williams was never far from his mirrors. 7 wins in 16 races secured the title in 1991, with iconic moments throughout the year. The opening race in Brazil demonstrated particular caliber as he competed the final lap stuck in 6th gear before being physically lifted out of the car due to exhaustion. And there's actually team radio from that. I don't know if you guys will hear it or not. But there was an iconic team radio. Can't remember who it was, but we could. Yeah, it was Barrichello. Nearly died. I'll see if I can. I think it'll be in here somewhere. I'll mute it. I'm gonna get claimed for showing this, of course, but like, I just don't care. It's important to the story of Senna. Yeah. Here it is. So, it's first on the list, rightfully so. So this was Senna winning in Brazil in '91. He went, ah, 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 I can't believe it! Ah! Oh my god! Yeah! Yeah! Yeah. Yeah, that it's such an iconic team radio. 1992 saw Williams nailed it. Yeah, the Williams was unstoppable with active suspension. He managed to take a fine win in Monaco. He qualified in third. He capitalised on a loose wheel nut for Mansell, and he defended for nearly 20 laps from him, and managed to take a win. He took 2 more wins in 92. 1983. Now this was his best drive. Prost did dominate in 1983. Yes, that's true, but Senna still took 5 wins and won the European Grand Prix. Now, I put a video up on Instagram of this with the Great Gig in the Sky by Pink Floyd playing, with obviously my edited text and everything. And it's crazy. I didn't actually realise how good an editor I was with the Great Gig in the Sky thing. Nah, I'm not. He moves up to first place before the end of the first lap before disappearing into this distance. Not even a pit stop could slow him down. I am speechless, really over the moon. Conditions like this is gambling, and it's taking chances that pays off. I think we gambled good and we got the result. I mean, yeah, here it is. It will be from 4 to 7. This is one of Formula One's most iconic starts. The quality isn't great, so I apologise. But so watch Senna. So he's the fourth McLaren there. He drops behind Wendlinger, the black Sauber, and he's side by side with the yellow and green Benetton of Schumacher. And then there's Andretti trying to go around the outside of him, Michael Andretti, his teammate at the time. So that's him past Schumacher. So that's one pass he's made already. And then he goes all the way around the outside of Wendlinger. Beautiful move up into third. Then he is working his way. He's getting slipstream, and he's right behind. Damon Hill, down the inside, a corner which you don't typically overtake at. He's still going, and he's closing in on Prost, right? He's already pulled about half a second, maybe a second on Hill already there. And this move here has got to be one of my favourite F1 moves of all time. So Andretti bins it because he's had a collision with Wendlinger. Meanwhile, Senna is behind Prost heading into the chicane. And then coming in towards the hairpin, there's Wendlinger there. Coming into the hairpin, he makes a brilliant move down the inside, and that's heading into the final corners of the final corner of the track at that time. You know, that's just leads, Prost second, Hill is third, a tremendous and he did finish runner up. He moved to Williams, and this was when things became tragic basically. How did Roland lose control of his car? He didn't actually lose control of his car. There was a front wing failure, and his car lifted. So, like, because when you have a front wing failure, you can't control the car because the front wing's lifted under. Senna is the best F1 driver. Second, Schumacher, and third, Lewis Hamilton. I'll give my opinion. I think he is the greatest Formula 1 driver of all time, in my opinion. I don't think Schumacher or Hamilton are better than him. I would put Jim Clark second, and I'd put Hamilton third, and then I'd put Schumacher and Fangio. But it's so difficult to rank those 5. Those 5 for me are, and to a degree Prost, are impossible to rank. But now we head into the final part, which is, the final part of this stream, which is Ayrton Senna and Imola 1984, F1's darkest weekend. So yeah, as this was published today by James, and as it says, it's the 30th anniversary of the San Marino Grand Prix. I'm getting shivers down my spine now. A weekend that continues to feel the ramifications today. Race day at Imola compounded a weekend that saw horrific injuries and the deaths of Ayrton Senna and Roland Matzenberger. So there's Senna just before the race. At first glance, the 1984 F1 cars may not have seemed drastically different from the 1983 counterparts. However, with the low ground clearance and exposed cockpit, they presented a stark image to the vast worldwide audience. Drivers' necks, shoulders and hands were exposed, a design philosophy not repeatable today. The banning of traction control and other driver aids ahead of 1984 now had F1 focusing on driver ability. However, as we know it today, safety did not exist and accidents began to happen during the testing season. Benetton driver J.J. Leto suffered a high-speed crash in Barcelona. Senna didn't look in the right mindset before the race. yeah, I remember Sid Watkins said to him before the race, and I think they'll show this. James will say this, but um, uh, Sid Watkins said to him, "Yeah, Ayrton, why don't you withdraw from racing tomorrow? In fact, why don't you give it up altogether? What else do you need to do? You've been world champion 3 times. You're obviously the quickest driver. Give up and go fishing." And then Senna said, "Sid, there are certain things over which we have no control. I cannot quit. I have to go on." It was, yeah. Um, where was I? Yeah. He was removed from the car unconscious with a fractured neck vertebrae. Leo's was the first of many during the 1984 season, but the San Marino Grand Prix saw F1 painfully realise safety had to be overhauled when 2 drivers were killed in 2 days. As you can see there. Oh, sorry. 31-year-old Roland Ratzenberger, driving for the new SimTech team, and 34-year-old reigning world champion Ayrton Senna both lost their lives at Imola. And then there's Rubinho's crash. Imola back in the early 1990s presented a dangerous challenge for drivers. The track featured fast flowing corners and high curbs. With the cars rating low, mounting these could send the cars airborne. The Variante Bassa chicane just before the final corner caught many drivers out during the weekend. But Tamburello presented the biggest challenge by far, a 200-mile-an-hour curve that all that greeted a driver running off the track was more than a tarmac and a concrete wall. Ferrari's Gerhard Berger suffered a high-speed crash at Tamburello in 1989, but walked away unharmed, and his car actually got set alight for a second as well. Berger and Senna pushed for changes to the corner, tragically in the same spot where he would lose his life. These changes were not implemented, sadly, until after. During Friday's qualifying session, Rubens Barrichello, driving for Jordan, mounted the curb at the Variante Bassa at high speed. His Jordan B194 launched into the air and hit the tyre barriers hard. His car hit it airborne, front first before the car hit the ground, again front first before coming to a rest on its side. The severity forced his head forward, striking the cockpit and knocking him unconscious. Now, they don't mention this, but what happened was James doesn't mention this, but he did have a cut lip, but what happened was his tongue was actually was going to be swallowed by his throat. So Sid Watkins, who was the medical doctor for F1, he had to perform an emergency tracheotomy, and he saved his life. He saved Ruben's life. His injuries were nothing more than a fractured nose and a cut lip. His arm bandaged. The Brazilian played no further part in the weekend. Damon Hill and Mika Hakkinen were just some of the drivers who were caught out by the chicane, but none as severe as Barrichello's accident. So it's bad when 2 world champions and one of the best drivers to not win a world championship in Barrichello got caught out by it. Although Barrichello was quite pedestrian at this time in terms of he was quite new to Formula 1. I think this was his second season. Saturday's qualifying, Saturday qualifying saw F1's first death since 1986 when Elio De Angelis died during a test for Brabham. Simtek's Roland Ratzenberger was feeling positive heading into qualifying. Simtek and other new team Pacific had to pre-qualify their cars for the race. If unsuccessful, the team would take no further part over the weekend. The team progressed to official qualifying with both Ratzenberger and David Brabham, son of legendary Jack Brabham. Ratzenberger started his final lap, unaware that the front wing on his S941 was close to failing after mounting a curb earlier. Taking the flat-out Tamburello corner, his front wing failed, and on approach to the Tosa hairpin, he was on his way to the Tosa hairpin, but before that you had the Villeneuve chicane, I think. I'll see if I can get a track map of what the San Marino circuit was like. So there you go, there's Tamburello, there's Villeneuve there. So what happened was his front wing failed, and when he tried to turn into Tosa, his car went straight on there. So that's where Senna crashed, that's where Barrichello crashed, that's where Ratzenberger crashed, and then Leto and Lamy collided on the start. He collided with the concrete camera barriers 200 miles an hour out of view of the camera. When his car rejoined the circuit, Ratzenberger looked limp without movement in the cockpit. Emergency crews arrived on the scene. Within seconds, they were administering CPR. At this point, TV cameras moved away from the scene. He was announced dead shortly after. Speaking to motorsport.com, Damon Hill recalls driving as Williams past the wreckage on his way to the pits. I went past the wreckage of Rowland's car and my heart sank because it looked pretty bad immediately. Guys were standing around the car moving us past, but there was no attempt to get him out of the car and he looked limp. Upon seeing the car, Johnny Herbert also recalls his emotions. I saw the red flags, I saw a Simtech, but I didn't know which one. As I got up and looked, I remember him being slumped and thinking, and he said the S word. Herbert confessed to crying in his hotel room that evening and attended his funeral after the weekend. Like other drivers, he opted to continue racing. Teammate David Brabham, writing for F1.com, said he instantly knew upon driving past the car that the Austrian had passed away. And there's the quote I mentioned earlier. As I've gone around the corner, seen him and seen the car, it was a very vivid moment in my memory, and one that I can still see as clear as day. For me, I was looking at someone who wasn't there anymore. I went back to the pits, and of course everyone's in a state of panic. I drove past the car, so they were all asking me, what do you think? And I remember my wife Lisa asking me what I thought, and I said, I think he's gone. There was something about it. Simtech team principal Nick Worth recalled to motorsport.com when F1 boss Bernie Ecclestone told him the news that Ratzenberger had lost his life, and spoke of feeling numb in the aftermath of the incident. It's a set of emotions that I wouldn't want anyone to experience. When you design a car, when you're as responsible as I was for so many things, plus meeting Roland and essentially becoming a friend, it's just an indescribable feeling of the world falling under your feet. It was so difficult, the feeling of numbness. It's difficult talking about to this day. The hardest bit was when Bernie came and told us that Roland had died. That day, we lost a friend, someone who was doing the best he could, and we were doing the best job we could with him. He decided to come to a team that could have been a no-hoper team, but he decided to go with us and saw we were capable of being our direct opponents, and the future held promise. It was just awful. Senna was struggling to comprehend what had happened, and the picture quality isn't very good, but there's Senna and Hill and the Williams team. Ratzenberger's death prompted an immediate response from drivers who met to discuss driver safety. The aim was to reform the GPDA, the Grand Prix Drivers Association. Ayrton Senna and Michael Schumacher, the two championship contenders, spearheaded the movement along with a friend of Ratzenberger, Gerhard Berger, because they were both Austrian. Senna was nominated as director, fitting given his push for... so here it is. Here's the mention of Comas. Fitting given his push for driver safety and concern for his competitors. 2 years earlier, in 1982, he stopped on track to aid the stricken Eric Comas. Comas had crashed his Ligier at high speed at Spa and was knocked unconscious. Understanding the danger, Senna ran out of his McLaren, and he risked his own life, by the way, because he was running onto the circuit and there was other cars in the circuit. Turning the Ligier's engine off, he held Comas's head up until help arrived. It saved his life. Emotionally, Ratzenberger's death deeply affected Senna. He reportedly collapsed on the floor of his motorhome in tears, having visited the crash site with F1 doctor and friend Professor Sid Watkins. Watkins revealed in his book Life at the Limit that he suggested to Senna that he withdraw from F1 entirely. Ayrton, why don't you withdraw from racing tomorrow? In fact, why don't you give it up altogether? What else do you need to do? You've been world champion 3 times and you're obviously the quickest driver. Give it up and let's go fishing. Senna responded, Sid, there are certain things over which we have no control. I cannot quit, I have to go on. Despite reported concerns from Williams and Watkins over Senna's mindset, he would race. He remarked the next morning that he was being forced to race. As photographer John Nicholson explains, he took one of his last photos of the world champion. And this is exactly what I Want Pickle Right Now is saying about his mindset. Then on the Sunday morning, we're in the debrief room and I took some pictures of Damon and Ayrton was saying, I don't want to race, they're making me race. And it's like, what can I do? I'm just a photographer, you need to have a word with Bernie, and I can't do anything. As seeing the rest of the drivers prepared to take to the grid, they were resolute in their resolve. Ratzenberger's death must lead to an immediate change in F1 safety. But Ayrton Senna's state of mind continued to concern those close to him as he prepared for lights out. Lights out leads to injury. So this is the first crash of the race, and this was Leto and Lamy. Leto's Benetton on the third row saw that lights out as the field moved around him. Pedro Lamy's Lotus came across the Benetton unsighted and careered into the rear of the Finn. The impact detached the front right and rear tires from Lami's Lotus. Luckily, the Portuguese driver walked away unscathed and later received light arm injury, but was otherwise unharmed. But the wheels managed to vault spectator fence, landing in a capacity crowd. 8 fans and on-duty policemen were injured, causing concern throughout the paddock. The safety car was immediately deployed, with Senna leading Schumacher while the rear was cleared from the circuit. I don't know if it'll mention about the silly, stupid Opel Vectra that they had, but they had a silly, stupid Opel Vectra that was a safety car, and it was ridiculous. It pulled off the track on lap 6 as the race resumed. Senna attempted to use the heavily revised FW16 to get his season back on track following 2 consecutive retirements in the opening 2 races. 1 lap later, Senna went wide off the circuit at full throttle, hitting a concrete retaining wall at Tamburello hard. The impact destroyed the side of his FW16 as again a front and rear tyre detached from a car at Imola. Commentator Murray Walker exclaimed at the shock of the sight of the Williams slowly coming to a halt. Within seconds, everyone in the paddock knew the severity of the crash. Medical staff, including Professor Sid Watkins, were among the first on the scene. Speaking for the Senna film, Watkins said he knew instantly that Senna's injuries were fatal and revealed he believed he saw his friend die on the tarmac. We got him out of the cockpit and got his helmet off and got an airway into him, and I saw from his neurological signs that it was going to be a fatal brain injury. And then he sighed and his body relaxed, and that was the moment. I'm not religious, but I thought his spirit departed. The atmosphere at the Williams team and the entire paddock was one of resignation and realisation. No one could quite believe the tragedy unfolding around them. A helicopter took the critically injured Senna to hospital, where he was pronounced dead shortly afterwards. The cause of Senna's crash remains a mystery to this day. However, his death was caused by the FW16 hitting the wall at the precise angle for his detached suspension shaft to hit and penetrate his helmet. So there was one clip I wanna find, and I don't know if Michael Schumacher's quotes are gonna be in this article, but okay, it's not right. So there was a clip of Schumacher and what happened in the accident. It's not that one. Is it this one? Yeah, here it is. Okay, so yeah, I don't know if you can hear it, but
worse than his
there's a pause, and I'll go and see if you guys can hear it. Hang on. Yeah, you guys can hear it. Okay, so here it is. So I'll play the whole clip and I'll be quiet.
Then you don't expect anything like this. You just think, he has a burst on the arm, or maybe he has a broken leg, and then you go back, they put up the grid, you don't know what's going on, nobody comes to you and explains the situation, and you just think that the race has to go on, everybody's going to race, so you're going to race. You don't see why you shouldn't race. And even after the race, when we stopped and we went up to the podium, there's always Pasquale who comes to us and is with us. He told us, he's in a coma, but I heard about coma. You don't know coma can be.
And do you know what's so sad about this is that, and this is probably the only time I'll pause it, but Schumacher mentions about a coma. He was in a coma, Michael Schumacher, and he's never recovered from
which is going to be okay the next day or very bad, but you don't judge it, and because you still don't believe that there's something particular or very dangerous or very heavy, you don't believe it. And I still,
what I'll do is actually, hang on a second, I'll mute my mic and I'll turn off my camera for a second. Let me just
I think it was 2 hours after the race when Mr. Walkinshaw came up to me and said he's looking very bad, and I thought, no, he's in coma, but coma doesn't mean anything bad. And I said, no, it looks not too good. And then somebody came to me later and said he's dead. And 1 minute later, and the next one came to me and said, no, he's in coma. But there was so little information at this time that you didn't know what you should think about this. And I still didn't believe that he's gonna be dead. I just couldn't think of that point. I just thought, yeah, no, he's going to be the champion. He maybe misses 1 or 2 races and then he's coming back again. But the worst was really the 2 weeks after this. I mean, once I really had to accept that it is that he is dead. I mean, this was just something crazy.
So yeah, that was Schumacher talking about Senna's death, and yeah, it's crazy. And this is somebody from Inside Williams, Anne Bradshaw. Now, I don't know Anne herself, but I know one of her closest friends, because he's one of my friends, Matt Bishop. But yeah, she spoke of her emotions and looking after the welfare of the mechanics in the immediate aftermath of the accident, because she was the press officer. She was the, one of the leading people within the organisation in terms of, the reputation of the company. I had to also remember there were mechanics who'd been working on his car and what they were thinking. I got a team of people who I needed to make sure they weren't hustled by the media, get them home, get back home and get them away from what was a dreadful situation in the best possible way. Because when you've been working on somebody's car and that happens, you're obviously going to doubt yourself and start worrying. So you had to think about those guys who need support, and luckily we got them back to the UK. We were on a charter flight, everyone was amazing, the people at the airport, at Gatwick, the TV people agreed if I came out with talks, they wouldn't try to stop mechanics. Okay, good. Okay, so sometimes the press are lynches. They're right lynches, but okay, sometimes the press are right lynches, but in this case they were actually really good. Damon Hill, speaking in 2020, as reported by Yahoo, also gave an insight into his own state of mind, revealing he struggled to grasp a weekend that had deteriorated so badly. It was a defining moment in modern sport, and a moment nobody will ever forget. We had gone a long time without any shock events, so to get a double whammy in one weekend knocked everyone for 6 and shocked us all. Every time I think of how that weekend unfolded, it's almost unbelievable. Everything seemed out of control. It was honestly horrific and a real test of your nerve and one's philosophy about what is sane and what is not. Ahead of the restart, Anne Bradshaw came up to me and intimated it was Senna and it wasn't good, but I took that to mean it was a grave injury. I didn't know he was dead. In fact, nobody competing knew he was dead until the end of the race. The race restarted 45 minutes later with the true gravity of Senna's situation unknown. The field got away cleanly this time with no accidents off the line. Another accident rounded off F1's darkest weekend. Achille Alboretto's Minardi exited the pits after making his second stop, with the right rear detaching and bouncing back towards the pits. The out-of-control tyre hit 3 Ferrari mechanics and 1 from Lotus. All sustained light injuries occurred as mechanics from up and down the pit lane rushed to assist in getting the injured medical treatment. Schumacher took victory from Larini and Hakkinen, a subdued and overwhelming. Thing is, right, the person I feel for most of us on that podium was Larini, because Larini, that was his only podium. That was his moment where he shined, and yet he couldn't celebrate it because Senna had died. A subdued and overwhelming sense of tragedy curbed the podium celebrations. In the post-race press conference, Schumacher summarised the thoughts of the F1 paddock. What happened this weekend, I've never seen something like this. Not just one thing, so many things. The only thing I can say is I hope we learn from this. I think there's a lot to learn from, and we have to use this and things like this. They shouldn't happen without taking experience from it. 2 deaths in 2 days devastated the sport. Brazil announced 3 days of official mourning in the wake of Senna's death, with arch-rival Alain Prost, a coffin bearer at his funeral, joining the other drivers who attended to show their respects of a true legend of the sport. Now the thing was Mosley didn't attend the funeral. I don't know, he didn't mention this, but the FIA president, Max Mosley, he never actually attended the funeral. He went to Roland's, because nobody went to Roland's. Everybody went to Senna's funeral, which was a shame. So the people who worked on Senna, people wanted gone. No, they wanted them to get out of the country because they didn't want them to, have to deal with the stress of being in the press. Because, when you're working on a car and somebody dies in that car, you feel responsible for it. But yeah, Max Mosley, he didn't attend Roland's funeral. He attended Roland's funeral, sorry, not Ayrton's, because he said somebody had to or something along those lines. Yeah, here it is. Only 5 actually attended his. So that was his teammate Brabham, Johnny Herbert, Frentzen, Wendlinger, and Berger. So that meant that, if I do the math, 1984 Formula 1 grid, if you look at the drivers on the grid, 27 drivers. So that means 22 of them went to Senna's funeral, and 21 drivers if you just include Senna. 26 drivers if you don't include Senna. 21 of them went to Senna's funeral, and 5 of them went to Roland's, which is really sad. But I do not know why they held them at such similar dates. They should have held them on different days, at different times, so that they could all go to both. And that was really good of Max Mosley to do, go to Roland's funeral, because everybody did go to Ayrton's, and it was a shame because Roland's tends to be the forgotten man. FIA President Max Mosley announced sweeping car changes would be made immediately. The size of the diffuser was reduced. The front end plates were raised so that accidents like Roland's were less likely to happen. And restrictions were placed on their size. This reduced the downforce by a substantial 15%. The cars were being increased by 25 kilos, so cockpit safety changes could be made. Particular emphasis was given to strengthening the wishbones to prevent tires and other car parts from detaching and hitting the driver. The airboxes were removed from the engines, and the teams were required to install air vents to reduce the effect. The wooden plank on the car's underside debuted later in the year. This required the cars to be raised, preventing them from bottoming out. A wear tolerance of 10% was permitted, but this equated to 1 millimeter. It's like having 1 millimeter up or down. The drivers also acted, so they did form the GPDA. Lauda joined as director, and he worked with Schumacher to ensure driver safety demands were met at tracks. And I'm sure Jackie Stewart had a part in that as well. Roland was in his second season in Formula 1. Well, actually, no, he was only that was only his third Grand Prix. It was actually his first season. He hadn't actually raced in Formula 1. His first race, he only qualified for one race, and it was in the Pacific Grand Prix. I think he finished 7th. So, in current 11th, sorry. He didn't qualify in Brazil. He finished 11th in the Pacific Grand Prix. And I don't know if this mentions it, but Senna donated millions to charity after he died, secretly. Which just shows, to do that privately just shows the humility he had. And we lost Hubert in 2019. Yeah. That was another freak accident. I watched that race, and that's the only race I've watched where a driver died. And I can remember where I was when it happened. I was sitting in my living room, down the stairs, same house, and I remember watching the race, and I saw the accident, and what I did was I went upstairs. I put on Sky Sports News, and I wasn't on social media at the time apart from YouTube. So I was checking my phone, I was checking Twitter, I was Googling, and nothing came out until it came up on the screen that he had passed away, and I just couldn't eat. I couldn't eat any food, and that's rare for me because I'm the type of person who eats a lot of food. And yeah, I couldn't eat. I was so emotional, and I struggled, and because this was when my mental health was really not that great. It was getting better at this point, but then it got worse after a couple months. So I was really struggling at this stage, mentally, and that didn't help. But it was good that Char won that race. It's sort of written in the stars in a way. Senna's legacy and influence on motorsport cannot be understated. Every safety feature on a Grand Prix car up to 2014 can be attributed to his and Ratzenberger's death at Imola. Raised cockpits were introduced in 1996 after Senna's death, the strengthening of wishbones and the introduction of barge boards. Sorry. I hope your mental health's better. Yeah, it's a lot better now because I take medication for it. I have anxiety disorder. I have an anxiety disorder, so I take medication for it. I'm in the middle of exam season right now, so it's a little bit stressful, but it's you just sort of deal with it. And I hope your mental health is good as well, because we don't talk enough about mental health and how it affects us all, because it's a taboo topic, and I hate that it's a taboo topic. I'm hoping one day that I can make a video or a documentary on my story, not in a I survived, look at me, but like more like a if I can get through it, you guys can too, kind of thing. And it took so long for me to get my medication, but that's a topic for another day. The introduction of barge boards aimed to prevent incidents similar to those seen in Imola. Crash structure and side impact tests were introduced in 1995. These ensured cars could survive high-speed impacts in the form if needed. This is also integral to F1. 30 years later, the plank remains in F1, a testament to ingenuity and a push for safety that never ceases. And of course, the halo being introduced in 2018 as well. Because if the halo was on Senna's car, he wouldn't have died. He'd have been perfectly fine. Senna died a three-time champion, all achieved at McLaren while chasing a fourth with Williams. His achievements on and off the track mark him as one of F1's greatest drivers. We'll never know the success he would have had with Williams in later years of his career. Ratzenberger had his career cut short, having achieved his dream of driving in F1. Senna's death and Ratzenberger's just 24 hours before highlighted the urgent need for a safety overhaul in F1. Senna's death overshadowed Ratzenberger's, but both were tragic losses. Motorsport is dangerous, and we can sadly never make F1 truly safe. Imola 1984 was the catalyst for much needed change and came at a massive cost. So that's sort of Senna's story. I'll go and move this because that's what I sort of wanted to talk about today. I've been live for nearly 2 hours, so I'm gonna go now and get my dinner and do some revision because I've got an APSOF maths exam in a couple of days. But yeah, reading all that reminded me of everything, and I've got a bit, I'm quite emotional about it because it's really really difficult to talk about, because it's not like the deaths in the 60s and 70s where they were common. I mean, the only death in motorsport I can think of, the only two deaths I can think of in motorsport that were this impactful are Jim Clark's death, and I would probably say either Ascari's death or Hubert's. Hope you do well on your exam. Thank you very much. I had my first exam yesterday, so I'm trying to manage my anxiety and manage my schedule and do stuff like this because I enjoy doing this. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. Thanks. I want pickle right now. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next stream, whenever that may be. It might be at the weekend, it might